Hey guys, I'm going to finish our last few chapters of Wonder for you. I hope that you've enjoyed the book and that you've gotten to listen to all of the chapters. It's one of my favorites, and the last of it is probably the best part. So here we go. A simple thing. About an hour later, we were all seated in the giant auditorium waiting for Mr. Tushman to give his middle school address. The auditorium was even bigger than I had imagined it would be, bigger even than the one at Via's school. I looked around, and there must have been 1,000,000 people in the audience. Okay, maybe not 1,000,000, but definitely a lot. Thank you, Headmaster Jensen, for those kind words of introduction, said Mr. Tushman, standing behind the podium on the stage as he talked into the microphone. Welcome, my fellow teachers and members of the faculty. Welcome, parents and grandparents, friends and honored guests, and most especially welcome to my 5th and 6th grade students. Welcome to Beecher Prep Middle School graduation ceremonies. Everyone applauded. Every year, continued Mr. Tushman, reading from his notes with his reading glasses way down on the tip of his nose, I'm charged with writing 2 commencement addresses, one for the 5th and 6th grade graduation ceremony today, and one for the 7th and 8th grade ceremony that will take place tomorrow. And every year I say to myself, let me cut down on my work and just write one address that I can use for both situations. Seems like it shouldn't be such a hard thing to do, right? And yet each year I still end up with 2 different speeches, no matter what my intentions, and I finally figured out why this year. It's not, as you might assume, simply because tomorrow I'll be talking to an older crowd with a middle school experience that is largely behind them, whereas your middle school experience is largely in front of you. No, I think it has to do more with this particular age that you are right now, this particular moment in your lives that even after 20 years of being around students this age still moves me. Because you're at the cusp, kids. You're at the edge between childhood and everything that comes after. You're in transition. We're all gathered here together, Mr. Tushman continued, taking off his glasses and using them to point at all of us in the audience, all your families, friends, and teachers, to celebrate not only your achievements of this past year, Beecher middle schoolers, but your endless possibilities. When you reflect on this past year, I want you all to look at where you are now and where you've been. You've all gotten a little taller, a little stronger, a little smarter, I hope. Here, some people in the audience chuckled. But the best way to measure how much you've grown isn't by inches or the number of laps you can now run around the track or even your grade point average, though those things are important to be sure. It's what you've done with your time, how you've chosen to spend your days, and whom you have touched this year. That, to me, is the greatest measure of success. There's a wonderful line in a book by J.M. Barrie, and no, it's not Peter Pan. I'm not going to ask you to clap if you believe in fairies. Here, everyone laughed again. But in another book by J.M. Barrie called The Little White Bird, he writes, he started flipping through his small book on the podium until he found the page he was looking for, and then he put on his reading glasses. Shall we make a new rule of life? Always try to be a little kinder than necessary? Here Mr. Tushman looked up at the audience. Kinder than necessary, he repeated. What a marvelous line, isn't it? Kinder than necessary. Because it's not enough to be kind. One should be kinder than needed. Why I love that line, that concept, is that it reminds me that we carry with us as human beings not just the capacity to be kind, but the very choice of kindness. And what does that mean? How is that measured? You can't use a yardstick. It's like I was saying just before. It's not like measuring how much you've grown in a year. It's not exactly quantifiable, is it? How do we know we've been kind? What is being kind anyway? He put on his reading glasses again and started flipping through another small book. There's another passage in a different book I'd like to share with you, he said. If you'll bear with me while I find it. Here we go. In Under the Eye of the Clock by Christopher Nolan, the main character is a young man who's facing some extraordinary challenges. There's this one part where someone helps him, a kid in his class. On the surface, it's a small gesture, but to this young man, whose name is Joseph, it's, well, if you permit me. He cleared his throat and read from the book. It was at moments such as these that Joseph recognized the face of God in human form. It glimmered in their kindness to him. It glowed in their keenness. It hinted in their caring. Indeed, it caressed in their gaze. He paused and took off his reading glasses again. It glimmered in their kindness to him, he repeated, smiling. Such a simple thing, kindness. Such a simple thing. a nice word of encouragement given when needed, an act of friendship, a passing smile. He closed the book, put it down, and leaned forward on the podium. Children, what I want to impart to you today is an understanding of the value of that simple thing called kindness. And that's all I want to leave you with today. I know I'm kind of infamous for my verbosity. Here, everyone laughed again. I guess he knew he was known for his long speeches. But what I want you, my students, to take away from your middle school experience, he continued, is the sure knowledge that in the future you make for yourselves, anything is possible. If every single person in this room made it a rule that wherever you are, whenever you can, you will try to act a little kinder than is necessary, the world really would be a better place. And if you do this, if you act just a little kinder than is necessary, someone else, somewhere, someday may recognize in you, in every single one of you, the face of God. He paused and shrugged. Or whatever politically correct spiritual representation of universal goodness you happen to believe in. He added quickly, smiling, which got a lot of laughs and a load of applause, especially from the back of the auditorium where the parents were sitting. Awards. I liked Mr. Tushman's speech, but I have to admit, I kind of zoned out a little during some of the other speeches. I tuned in again as Miss Rubin started reading off the names of the kids who had made the high honor roll, because we were supposed to stand up when our names were called. So I waited and listened for my name as she went down the list alphabetically. Reed Kingsley, Maya Markowitz, August Pullman. I stood up, and then when she finished reading off the names, she asked us all to face the audience and take a bow, and everyone applauded. I had no idea where in that huge crowd my parents might be sitting. All I could see were the flashes of light from people taking photos and parents waving at their kids. I pictured Mom waving at me from somewhere, even though I couldn't see her. Then Mr. Tushman came back to the podium to present the medals for academic excellence, and Jack was right. Zemina Chin won the gold medal for overall academic excellence in 5th grade. Charlotte won the silver. Charlotte also won a gold medal for music. Amos won the medal for overall excellence in sports, which I was really happy about because ever since the nature retreat, I consider Amos to be like one of my best friends in school. But I was really, really thrilled when Mr. Tushman called out Summer's name for the gold medal in creative writing. I saw Summer put her hand over her mouth when her name was called, and when she walked up onto the stage, I yelled, "Woohoo, Summer!" as loudly as I could, though I don't think she heard me. After the last name was called, all the kids who had just won awards stood next to each other on stage, and Mr. Tushman said to the audience, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very honored to present to you this year's Beecher Prep School Scholastic Achievers. Congratulations to all of you." I applauded as the kids on stage bowed. I was so happy for Summer. "The final award this morning," said Mr. Tushman after the kids on stage had returned to their seats, "is the Henry Ward Beecher Medal to honor students who have been notable or exemplary in certain areas throughout the school year. Typically, this medal has been our way of acknowledging volunteerism or service to the school." I immediately figured Charlotte would get this medal because she organized the coat drive this year, so I kind of zoned out a bit again. I looked at my watch, 10:56. I was getting hungry for lunch already. Henry Ward Beecher was, of course, the 19th century abolitionist and fiery sermonizer for human rights after whom this school was named, Mr. Tushman was saying when I started paying attention again. While reading up on his life in preparation for this award, I came upon a passage that he wrote that seemed particularly consistent with the themes that I touched on earlier, themes I've been ruminating upon all year long. Not just the nature of kindness, but the nature of one's kindness, the power of one's friendship, the test of one's character, the strength of one's courage. And here the weirdest thing happened. Mr. Tushman's voice cracked a bit, like he got a little choked up. He actually cleared his throat and took a big sip of water. I started paying attention for real now to what he was saying. "The strength of one's courage," he repeated quietly, nodding and smiling. He held up his right hand like he was counting off courage, kindness, friendship, character. These are the qualities that define us as human beings and propel us on occasion to greatness. And that is what the Henry Ward Beecher Medal is about, recognizing greatness. But how do we do that? How do we measure something like greatness? Again, there's no yardstick for that kind of thing. How do we even define it? Well, Beecher actually had an answer for that. He put his reading glasses on again and leafed through a book and started to read. "Greatness," wrote Beecher, "lies not in being strong, but in the right using of strength. He is the greatest whose strength carries up the most hearts." And again, out of the blue, he got all choked up. He put his two index fingers over his mouth for a second before continuing. He is the greatest, he finally continued, whose strength carries up the most hearts by the attraction of his own. Without further ado, this year, I'm very proud to award the Henry Ward Beecher Medal to the student whose quiet strength has carried up the most hearts. So will August Pullman please come up here to receive this award? Floating. People started applauding before Mr. Tushman's words actually registered in my brain. I heard Maya, who was next to me, give a little happy scream when she heard my name, and Miles, who was on the other side of me, patted my back. "Stand up, get up," said the kids all around me, and I felt lots of hands pushing me upward out of my seat, guiding me to the edge of the row, patting my back, high-fiving me. "Way to go, Augie! Nice going, Augie!" I even started hearing my name being chanted, "Augie, Augie, Augie." I looked back and saw Jack leading the chant, fists in the air, smiling and signaling for me to keep going, and Amos shouting through his hands, "Woohoo, little dude!" Then I saw Summer smiling as I walked past her row, and when she saw me look at her, she gave me a secret little thumbs up and mouthed a silent, "Cool beans" to me. I laughed and shook my head like I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't believe it. I think I was smiling, maybe I was beaming, I don't know. As I walked up the aisle towards the stage, all I saw was a blur of happy, bright faces looking at me and hands clapping for me, and I heard people yelling things out at me like, "You deserve it, Augie, good for you, Augie." I saw all my teachers in the aisle seats, Mr. Brown and Miss Petosa and Miss Roche and Mrs. Antanabi and Nurse Molly and all the others, and they were cheering for me too, woohooing and whistling. I felt like I was floating. It was so weird, like the sun was shining full force on my face and the wind was blowing. As I got closer to the stage, I saw Miss Reuben waving at me from the front row, and then next to her was Mrs. G, who was crying hysterically, a happy crying, smiling and clapping the whole time. And as I walked up the steps to the stage, the most amazing things happened. Everyone started standing up. Not just the front rows, but the whole audience, and suddenly got up on their feet, whooping, hollering, clapping like crazy. It was a standing ovation for me. I walked across the stage to Mr. Tushman, who shook my hand with both his hands and whispered in my ear, "Well done, Augie." Then he placed the gold medal over my head, just like they do in the Olympics, and had me turn to face the audience. It felt like I was watching myself in a movie almost, like I was someone else. It was like that last scene in Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, when Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and Chewbacca are being applauded for destroying the Death Star. I could almost hear the Star Wars theme music playing in my head as I stood on the stage. I wasn't even sure why I was getting this medal, really. No, that's not true. I knew why. It's like people you see sometimes and you can't imagine what it would be like to be that person, whether it's somebody in a wheelchair or somebody who can't talk. Only I know that I'm that person to other people, maybe to every single person in that whole auditorium. To me, though, I'm just me, an ordinary kid. But hey, if they want to give me a medal for being me, that's okay. I'll take it. I didn't destroy a Death Star or anything like that, but I did just get through 5th grade, and that's not easy, even if you're not me. I'm going to pause there so that I can get myself together, and then I'm going to read the rest of it for you.